You're listening to Superpowers of the Soul on the Superpower Up Podcast, the show that elevates superpowers to the divine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm Jennifer Urezzio, superpower expert and founder of Soul Language, and this is Superpowers of the Soul. And I'm here today with Destinee Berman. What a cool name. And the topic is a spiritual journey online. Welcome, Destinee.
I'm so happy to be here. Thank you, Jennifer.
You are so welcome. So I always start the show with the question is, what do you consider the superpower of your soul?
I received variations of this question, and it's always been hard for me to pick one. But for me, it really comes down to shifting perspective and enabling healing from that way. So it's not that I call myself a spiritual teacher, but I work with spiritual teachers and business owners, and it's really about shifting perspective and translating so they can step into their fullest possibility.
Yeah. And I think we're all doing the same thing here. We're all reminding people that they're whole and complete. It's just our part of that secret sauce on how we do it.
Yes, exactly. I love that. I love how you said that.
So we talk a lot about sacred purpose in the soul language community and the superpower expert community. And I define sacred purpose as something you're profoundly here to experience and then offer that experience to others. What do you consider your sacred purpose?
My sacred purpose is to really bring the magic to the masses. And what I mean by that is all the mystical, all the intuitive arts. Yoga and meditation has gotten more mainstream, right, in the last 5 to 10 years. But I personally believe that in terms of intuition, psychic, tarot, astrology, there's a greater possibility here in terms of that being into mainstream consciousness. And a big part of my purpose, at least in this incarnation, is to really enable that and to really normalize the conversation around that.
Yeah. And I agree, and I think that's happening more and more. I think, the word soul, from my perspective, is showing up in commercials. They named a car soul, there is an integration. And if we look at any huge success, anyone from Albert Einstein to, you name it, Oprah, though Oprah and I have that push-pull for being years in marketing PR, but, they all say the same thing. They also going within connection, energy. They're all talking about connecting to something much bigger than our humanness to create this profound bliss, abundance, whatever you want to throw the word in there. Yeah. So I love this. So how is that sacred purpose? I mean, you talked a little bit about it, but how is that sacred purpose reflected in the work that you do out in the world?
Well, a couple of different ways. And it sounds so mundane to even say, but I really do believe in the power of technology and even more so the power of the internet, right? So I work with all these different healers and spiritual teachers to become online educators. And we're at a time and place where online education has never been so widely accepted and consumed. And technology is, believe it or not, even though there's still glitches and breakdowns, technology has never made it so accessible. So we see the meeting of the world, we see the meeting of technology, and then we see the world more ready and probably needed than ever to receive the healing arts. And so I believe that with building out these thriving online communities where there is the delivery of free content, free teachings, and then of course paid programs in schools, that's really how all of that can get accelerated and how the type of shift and transformation can really be taken on. Of course, we'll see how this goes, but yeah.
So what has been a big theme that your soul has shared with you throughout your life? And that could be your soul or what your humanness interprets that.
Well, that's funny that you asked that because, I personally do a lot of healing work every week, every day, depending on whether it's meditation or some longer practices and whatnot. And something that's always coming up for me is really the integration of spirit and soul and human, right? So we have all these openings and these downloads that we're receiving in our spiritual practice or that I'm receiving in my spiritual practice. And then our soul wants to align with that. But then we also have the day-to-day, paying the bills and being a mom and being a wife. And so how do we integrate all the openings and holding ourselves both as spiritual and soulful beings, also as human beings? And that's something that comes up for me every day, whether it be in business. And I personally believe that entrepreneurship is one of the deepest spiritual journeys that you can be on. And it comes up every day in our relationships. So I don't know if that quite answers your question. Yeah. That is something that comes up for me frequently. It's always what I'm looking at.
I think it does. And I think that, that is the spiritual journey, the integration between that inner knowing and taking action, or expressing that inner knowing, expressing that connectedness as you write out the tax bill, and just expressing it as your kid is having a tantrum on the floor. Or, it's so easy to really feel the divinity in the good moments, the blissful moments, right? The spiritual journey, I think, on a human plane is really about feeling the bliss or feeling the connective in those moments where it's a human moment where it doesn't gear towards connectiveness. And I think that's what the path, I think, that almost every spiritual teacher has had to travel, and will constantly have to travel it, because as our expansion grows, as our consciousness grows, so does our humanness, that ego. And so it's just a matter of practice, I guess.
So true. And it's funny, because as you're saying that, it reminded me of a period in my life. So I was in this Shiva Tantra study in this community. It was a 6-month program. And I remember one of the practices was we would bow and pray every time we left the room. And we can't point our feet towards the altar if we were in the class and whatnot. And I couldn't, in the beginning, my mind couldn't understand why I would pray before I did the dishes or before I left the room. And then after a while, every single act, whether it be finishing the dishes or completing the session, you could really tune into the sacredness of it. And then I really understood the devotional practice of it. And that shifted everything for me. Now, I still don't always remember to bow and pray every time I complete a yoga practice or a meditation when I leave the room. But when I do, you feel that grace in it. And I think that's exactly what you're speaking to here.
Yeah, and that's originally why Please and Thank You was created, right?
Yes.
That kind of connecting to the infinite of those patterns and tasks, and to integrate more of the divinity within human form. We just don't kind of go to church in quotes on Sunday, right? We are the church. And, continuing to practice that. So before we do the break here, the last thing I want you to share with us is, what's been a big theme of discontentment in your life?
For me, it's always been closing the gap between the fullest potential and possibility of my soul and really for others. Among my friends and community, I so easily see the potential for where they're at, and I can feel such possibility for all of us. And in the human form, especially if we're diving into, reincarnation and all of that, it just takes time to manifest in the physical, in the earthly world. And I just always feel like this frustration, because it's like I can always I'm like always like looking ahead. And if you believe in astrology, my astrologer can dice all this into the chart and whatnot. But it's, I just always see what's possible, and I can get the sense of the vision. And yet the earthly plane is still catching up. And that's not a bad thing, but it can feel frustrating, and it can feel discontented. It can show up as discontentment.
Beautiful. Okay, everyone, stay tuned, because we are going to continue our discussion.
Are you here to change the world? Do you talk about things like vibration, frequency, awakening, and consciousness? Are you pretty sure you have superpowers? The Superpower Net is unlike normal coaching programs and conscious communities. We provide training, intuitive guidance, peer-to-peer learning, intensive one-on-one coaching, and a high vibrational network of people just like you. When you join the net, you get 24/7 access to a collaborative group of people who support you as you master master your personal power and unlock your superpowers. If you're ready to use your superpowers to change the world, then join the Superpower Net today. Visit superpowerexperts.com/thenet to learn more.
Welcome back with Destinee Berman and Jennifer Urezzio, and we're talking about spiritual journey online. Desiree, before we go on any further, please let everyone know how to get in touch with you.
So you can find me on my website at destineeberman.com, and also you can find me on Instagram. I've been making a focus on really connecting with both you and my tribe there, and that's at Des Berman. In between those two places, we'll have ways to connect.
Beautiful. So, traditionally, if you were going to have a spiritual journey, you would go to a place to have a spiritual journey. You would have a teacher, you would go to the mountain, you would go to the temple, you would go to the mosque, you would go and pray on a mountain. Traditionally, that's the way a spiritual journey was usually created, and now it's being changed so much because we have a whole new forum to take individuals and help them expand. How has that changed how the spiritual journey happens?
Well, a couple of things. So when I'm working with my clients, one of the phrases and one of the discussion points that always comes up is around becoming a household practitioner. So to your point, you're right that today it's not about going away to the mountaintop, and it's not about going away to the ashram to really be able to integrate spiritual practice and connecting to divinity in your day-to-day life. Now, the way we're consuming online education, because ultimately that's really what I've been working with my clients and students on, is to become online educators and to really be teaching online, is that people can really digest and take in these practices and take in these wisdom from a global community, from a global perspective. And so there is that day-to-day integration piece, there's a day-to-day modern piece where you don't have to go away. And actually, in some ways, I think that's harder, right? Because you're living every day, and then you're bringing in divine flow, but then you somehow have to figure out how to integrate and really weave the two together. Whereas if you go away from day-to-day life, in some ways it's more intense, but in some ways you're also not having to merge and bridge two worlds.
Yeah, and I agree. And that also brings up my next question is, when we go off on a spiritual journey, there's usually a spiritual journey group, right? And so then you have your personal experience, you have the support team of the group, you have the shared experiences. How do spiritual teachers allow that supporting of group energy, having a spiritual journey within a community is extremely profound, and it's extremely supportive. So how do online healers support community through online programs?
So with every single program that I've launched, we do have a private online community, and usually through a Facebook group. So, and we do our best to keep that very activated, to keep that engaged. So even with my program, there are many healers and spiritual business owners, and they're asking questions and supporting and sharing, and that does help. Now, the other thing to keep in mind is that by becoming online educators, you don't necessarily have to take away and give up your live retreats and your live workshops. So something that we've done is, yes, we're building this massive online community, and then we add one or two types of fuller on retreats, gatherings that people can choose to come together in a live person. So there's a closed online Facebook community that's really driving more ongoing connection. And then you can meet once, twice, a couple times a year that suits your work and your content, to really foster that live transmission as well. And from what I've seen, it works very well because it feeds each other. Not everyone's going to be able to make it to the live participation, but they still get an immense amount of value from the online piece, and then you can still connect live if you're able to make it, and it's really, really nice.
Yeah, is the person that takes the online program, do they kind of fit, in quotes, do they fit like a structure, or do they have certain characteristics? I have a bunch of online programs, and I love it. And at some point, I don't know if I'm an online community member, right? So, do they have a certain kind of characteristics, or is it a kind of person that wants to jump in online?
That's a good question. I haven't really seen common characteristics. I mean, among the different programs either I've launched or in my own system, and we have all age ranges. Now, it just so happens that I ended up working with all women healers, and we also attract a lot of women in our programs, but all age ranges, all locations, sometimes very remote locations that they just can't make it to live events and whatnot. But I don't really see a theme in the terms of the characteristics. It's more about the type of content, the type of shift, what they're dealing with in their lives. There's more themes around that, whether they're in transition or, they're looking to move into the second act of their career and whatnot. It's more around life themes than I would say characteristics in why they're participating in online.
Yeah, and it also sounds a little to me like your core client is going to be, of course, your core client, whether it's offline or online. It's the circumstances of them being either to go to an event or one-on-one is different. So their lifestyle is different, but the energy is still the same.
Yes, exactly. And what you'll find is that over time, people, it's a bit of where it feeds each other, right? Where they'll do the online content, then they'll come to a live when they get the chance, because with the online, many times you get lifetime access to the content. It's just presented differently. You can always go back to the recordings. And even though you're in a live environment, the transmission is unprecedented and is unmatched. You don't always get to go back to the content in the same way. So it actually really supports each other more so than I think that most people realize, especially as you build it over time.
Beautiful. Before we start to wrap up today, just let people again how to get in touch with you.
Sure. So you'll find me at my website, destineeberman.com, and also catch me on Instagram. I love to respond to messages, whether it just to say hello or any questions, and that's at Des Berman.
Beautiful. So, if there's one thing that you want people to remember from our conversation today, what would that be?
That it's really possible for many, many folks that I work with, that it's really possible to serve more people in this day and age, and that using the power of internet and using the power of modern marketing, that it really can support your life's work and it can really support your mission. And even if it may seem overwhelming at times or it may seem confusing, I've just seen it realized enough times that it's absolutely possible. And if it's broken into small steps and action is taken and progress is made, you will get there and you will look back and be pleasantly surprised at how large your community can really be and how many people your work can really be in the hands of.
Beautiful. So this is my standard last question. If you were a magnet on whatever you call your higher power, whether that's universe, tree, Bob, God, cupcake, if you were a magnet on that's refrigerator, what would your magnet say?
Mine would say love. It's a little broader and generic, but that's really, for me, it's really been a lifelong practice of dropping into my heart and coming from this place of love, no matter what's in front of us.
And I don't think you can go wrong with that word. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to chat with me today and for being a guest on the Superpowers of the Soul. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been great.
If you liked anything of what you heard today, you can connect with me and all the other experts in the Superpower Net at superpowerexperts.com/the net to find out more. Okay, everyone, you have a beautiful day.
Are you ready to discover your superpowers? Go now to superpowerexperts.com and take the Superpower Quiz today.